Originally developed by Black Isle Studios and Interplay Entertainment, Fallout 1 and 2 tasked players with exploring a wasteland after a nuclear event destroyed much of the global population. Many survivors of the nuclear war remained safe inside underground fallout shelters known as vaults. Throughout the games, these story-driven events would unravel through player interaction with NPCs. This would occur through both turn-based combat and conversations with characters via the use of player choice dialogue trees. Fallout 3, developed by Bethesda Game Studios, the creators of the highly esteemed Elder Scrolls franchise, debatably recaptured and improved upon the world established in these preceding games. Fallout 3 builds upon the lore and themes of the Fallout franchise to create a more open-ended experience, which overhauled many of the prior mechanics, yet remained true to the source material. An example of this is the VATS mechanic, which gives Fallout 3's combat some similarity to the turn-based combat of Fallouts 1 and 2. Another example is the world itself. The capital wasteland is viewed entirely from the perspective of the former vault dweller, the Lone Wanderer, yet still has the aesthetics and feel of the previous games. Combat in Fallout 3 is largely handled through simplified first-person shooter mechanics, in which the player is able to equip and use a variety of different weapons, including handguns, machine guns, rifles, nukes, and melee weapons. The player is able to zoom and target enemies using a reticle, as well as utilize the Vault-Assisted Targeting System, or VATS for short. This mechanic allows the player to essentially pause the game and assess surrounding threats. Players may select a target from the surrounding NPCs, and then specify a limb or body part to strike. The accuracy of the player's shot and amount of shots available is dependent on action points, or AP. However, combat is by no means the only method of interaction with NPCs at the player's disposal. Fallout 3 is a highly story-focused game, and as a result, text-based dialogue trees and player choice feature heavily throughout the entire game. This added agency allows the player to decide on the proceedings of events and confrontations. This can mean doing as little as learning a bit more about a character or avoiding a potentially serious fight, or as much as nuking an entire city. The emphasis on player interaction drives much of the Fallout 3 experience. The final key mechanic to Fallout 3 is its use of traditional RPG elements in how your player is outfitted with perks and attributes. Each time your character levels up, the player is able to specify which stats they would like to increase to better suit the game to their playstyle. This could mean adding extra points to the one-handed weapon stat for those who enjoy using handguns for combat, or choosing to specialize in intelligence or charisma to better control the outcome of events and conversations with NPCs. The aesthetics of Fallout 3 are consistent throughout the entire game, providing the feel of a world that is alive, despite the rampant depravity built upon an international genocide. The wasteland of Washington, D.C. is scorched and dotted throughout with the ruins of various landmarks and towns. Small details like destroyed vehicles and fossilized evidence of civilization complement the beauty and grotesque image of the world. Weapons and other gear reflect the 1950s style of the world, juxtaposed by seemingly high-tech power armor and science fiction weapons like laser guns, alien weapons, and miniature nukes. This attitude is reflected by the NPCs of Fallout 3. Regular people are commonly adorned in 1950s style clothes and speak with a fitting vernacular, while supernatural inhabitants like ghouls and super mutants bear irradiated scars of the nuclear holocaust. The juxtaposing natures of the wasteland create an environment where the average player can never feel too safe.
A boy! We've got a son, Catherine. A beautiful, healthy baby boy.
His main story is prefaced by a lengthy tutorial phase. This section of the first act lays out to the player all of the core mechanics that they will need to survive in the wasteland, as well as establish key characters such as the elusive father character. Key gameplay mechanics regarding movement, combat, dialogue, and stat allocation are slowly introduced to the player in brief glimpses of the protagonist's early life. For example, when the protagonist is only a toddler, the player is taught to walk around in the world at the same time as their on-screen counterpart. HUD prompts instruct the player the controls. Following this, the player is asked to allocate stats to various key attributes, including strength, perception, endurance, charisma, agility, and luck, or special for short. Part 3 then skips forward several years, to the protagonist's 10th birthday party. At this point, the player is encouraged to engage in dialogue with various NPCs at the party. By doing so, the player not only learns the conversational mechanics, but gains exposition about the world and its inhabitants.
Ugh, I don't want your nerd cooties. You're gonna be sorry you did.
After the party, the player is presented with their first gun, a BB gun, and instructed how to use it, using rad roaches for target practice. Slow approach to the tutorial phase enhances the user experience by gradually introducing new gameplay aspects in realistic contexts, at a rate that does not overwhelm the player. On-screen prompts and exposition also help to make Fallout 3 accessible to new players of both the franchise and Western RPGs. The general pacing of Fallout 3 as a whole also complements this slow build approach, with the first hour or so taking place inside Vault 101. This limits not only the player's mobility, but also the amount of variation in gameplay experiences, providing a safe place for the player to become accustomed to how Fallout 3 plays. However, once shenanigans erupt within the safe confines of the vault, the protagonist is thrust out into the open space of the capital wasteland. From this point on, the confining restraints of the vault are no longer applicable to the player. The difficulty of the game also begins to increase. Pacing, henceforth, becomes at the discretion of the audience. Quests related to the main story gradually increment their difficulty of the game, which builds alongside the player's expected experience within the game. However, the player is not bound to this style of play, as they may choose to entirely disregard the main story and simply explore or engage in side missions. This means that the player experience of Fallout 3 could be in flux, as they could potentially undertake missions that are too difficult for their current skill, or perhaps at the other end of the spectrum and too easy. The player always has access to information regarding objectives through the Pip-Boy. This device operates as an inventory, map, and statistics menu for the player, in a way that does not take the player out of the experience, as the Pip-Boy exists within the context of the world, attached to the character's arm. This gameplay device, which provides detail and waypoints, along with the use of exposition through character dialogue trees and NPC interaction, ensures the player is always informed as to where to go next. Fallout 3 presents an experience that is both familiar to older players, yet accessible to a new audience. The pacing of the tutorial and first act of the game is designed in such a way that it feels natural to the player, learning the necessary mechanics at the same time as the lone wanderer character. The aesthetic design of Fallout 3 is consistent throughout, engaging the player in a world which is inhabited by endearing NPCs and repulsive monsters. This balance of uncertainty in the world ensures that the audience is always contemplating the appropriate way to engage with situations. Finally, once released from the vault, Fallout 3 encourages player agency to the point where key missions and events throughout the game depend on how the player decides to proceed. This level of control is also complemented by the information provided to the audience through character exposition and through the use of the Pip-Boy device.